Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Welcome back to Texas History for Kids. This is episode 74, and I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos. Before we begin our story today, it's time for Zoe's Big Question.
Hi everybody. Last week I was given a history assignment. Me and my classmates had to choose a Native American tribe in Texas and report about it. One question we answered was, what tribe helped inspire the name of our state? Was it the Comanche, the Apache, or another tribe? You'll have to listen to today's episode to find out.
So naturally, as Zoe's resident Texas history fan, I went all in on this project with her, which then prompted an investigation into the tribes of Texas. So for the next 4 episodes, we will report on a few of these tribes. Stay tuned for more. Before there were cities, before there were roads, before anyone had ever heard the word Texas, there were people on the move. Tens of thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, the earth looked very different than it does today. Huge sheets of ice covered much of Asia, North America, and so much water was frozen that the oceans were lower than they are today. That's when a land bridge appeared. It connected Siberia to Alaska, which was a frozen highway across the top of the world. We call it the Bering Land Bridge. Families crossed that land bridge, following massive animals like mammoths and bison. They didn't know it yet, but they were becoming the first Americans. Some of them kept moving through icy mountain passes and down into warmer lands. And some of them, they made their way to what would one day be called Texas. These early people became the ancestors of the many native tribes who shaped Texas history for thousands of years. And over the next few weeks, we will discuss them one at a time. In the deep forests of East Texas, long before highways or high-rise buildings, something remarkable was happening. People were building giant mounds made of natural material, layer by layer, carrying baskets of soil on their backs. In a time when no machines existed, they weren't building forts, they weren't digging for gold, they were creating temples for the spirits. But who were they? Why did they burn these temples every few decades and then build them again? What does this ancient mystery have to do with the name of Texas? Well, today we're uncovering the story of the Caddo, the mound builders, farmers, and friends of East Texas. This isn't just a story, it's a story that's been buried beneath the ground for hundreds of years, and one that you can also go and visit still today. The Caddo are the Native American tribes from East Texas. Caddo spelled C-A-D-D-O. Now they didn't wander from place to place. They built villages, real ones, with homes made from wood and tall grasses. They grew corn, bean, and squash, known as the Three Sisters. The land was rich with rivers full of fish, and the forest teemed with deer and wild plants for them to eat. But farming was only part of their brilliant existence. The Caddo built ceremonial mounds, massive ones. On top of these flat-topped hills, they placed wooden temples, and then Every 80 to 100 years, something surprising happened. They would burn the temple to the ground, cover it with a new layer of soil, and build again. But why? Well, some believed it honored the passage of time, the circle of life, or the rise of a new leader. Each mound was like a time capsule layered with ash, soil, and some might say secrets. They believed their entire people came from beneath the earth itself. They say their ancestors emerged from a cave. Here's a story of some of the Caddo ancestors. A sacred cave called Chakanina, the place of crying. It happened long ago, near the Red and Mississippi rivers. The land was silent, and the earth was open. The Great Spirit had chosen a guide, Nish, the moon, to lead the people upward, one by one. They climbed out of the dark cave and into the light of the world. The first to emerge carried a drum, fire, and a ceremonial pipe. His wife was holding seeds, corn, and pumpkin, which were symbols of life. But Nish gave a very strong warning. Do not look back. And most of them listened, but some didn't. They turned around, and just for a moment, in that moment, the cave collapsed, its entrance sealed forever. The people who looked back were trapped inside, never to walk the earth again. Those who made it out wept for the ones they had lost. That's how the cave got its name, Chakanina, the place of crying. Now that was just a story that was passed down from generation to generation. But it explains a little bit of who they were, where they came from, and why they were deeply connected to the land. To them, their world was sacred, their past was alive, and their footsteps on the soil, they believed, were the footsteps of ancestors rising from the earth. Now, the Caddo left behind another clue to who they were: their pottery. Beautifully carved patterns, symbols, and swirls. Each pot told a story. Some held food, others held ashes of loved ones. If you were ever to walk through the piney woods of East Texas long ago, you might come across something unusual. Actually, if you visit the Caddo Mounds State Historic Park, which is located in Alto, Texas, you can see it for yourself. What you'll find is not just a hill, not just a bump in the land, but a sacred place. Because to the Caddo, the mounds held more than just memories. They held their ancestors. The Caddo believed that death wasn't the end. It was a journey. And to prepare for that journey, they buried their dead with honor, care, and ceremony. Important people like priests, warriors, or villagers were buried in log-lined tombs inside or near the ceremonial mounds. Their graves were never empty. They held gifts: a clay pot for food or water, a tool they may have used in their lifetime, or a piece of jewelry to remind them of home. The Caddo believed that the spirit continued on, and those items would help them into the next world. And in rare cases, the dead were cremated, and their ashes placed in the pottery urns that they created. Now, this wasn't the norm, but it did happen, especially in later times if a burial had to be moved. They held large ceremonies including music, dancing, and offerings to the Great Spirit. And then came the word Taisha, a word meaning friend or ally. Spanish explorers heard what they were saying and decided to use it to name the region. Now, Taisha means friend, and that word translates in Spanish to Tejas, and in Spanish translates to English and becomes Texas. So, That's where the name of our state came from. Everybody say it, Taisha, Taisha, Taisha. But this peaceful society faced tragedies as well. When the Europeans came, they brought more than trade. They also brought disease. Smallpox swept through the Caddo villages like a shadow. Then came the settlers. Treaties were broken, land was taken, and eventually the Caddo were forced to leave Texas and relocate to Oklahoma. But their story didn't vanish. Today, the Caddo Nation still lives on. They hold powwows, share their language, and keep their history alive. So the story buried beneath the mounds will never be forgotten. One word, one mound, one pot, each of them all tells the story of the Caddo, friends of Texas, builders of temples, and keepers of history. So now you know what tribe Zoe's assignment was in her history class. The Caddo Native Americans. Caddo. That's all for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week, where we'll uncover more Texas mysteries and legends. Stay curious.